Evening, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earth Watch on Tuesday, 28, 2023 on our planet. Hope you're getting a break in between these solar storms. My daughter hasn't kicked down any doors yet. So some people have been asking me after my last report, what can we expect? So I'm just going to give you a brief rundown. First, when I do a first posting on a solar event, it is to give you some advance notice to prepare if you or any of your loved ones, family members, friends are predisposed to the effects of solar flares, filament eruptions, etc. So you can learn first through knowledge the effects of cosmic radiation on the human brain and how you can prepare yourself. In most instances, you will have time to do so. Now, I approach things with a calm, cool-headed, rational manner. Unlike some other people who will very quickly jump to conclusions, jump to the gun, and they got to be the first one on the YouTube with their exaggerated headlines and scary pictures, etc. Some people with their overinflated ego got to say this is going to happen, and when it doesn't, they get very upset, have their tantrums, become salty. Anyway, so my last one about the M8.6 flare, and we're still not too sure what, if anything, is going to happen. The data has not been updated yet. So let's go through a rundown of the three types of events that we can happen on our sun: solar flare, filament eruption, and a coronal hole opening. So with a solar flare, it's an intense burst of electromagnetic radiation coming from the release of the magnetic energy associated with sunspots, a pair of sunspots. Basically, one's a negative and one's a positive, and when they meet, boom, right? Now, once again, flares occur in active regions of the sun. Now we can see those active regions coming around as two dark spots, sunspots. And they are often, but not always, accompanied by coronal mass ejections, which is the release of highly charged particles. Billions of tons of the plasma can be ejected. Now, depending on where on the face of the sun, it may or may not be Earth-directed. If it's off on the side, what they call the limb, in most cases, we won't get hit, or a very slight side swipe in the side of the planet, perhaps. Next, we have filament eruptions. So a filament eruption is a long solar filament of unstable strands of the solar material. A filament eruption is like a whip, it's like a snap. You sometimes see these visualizations from the sun. And then lastly, we have the coronal holes, which are big, dark regions we sometimes see. And these are basically just openings in the sun's corona where the magnetic field extends out, or the solar winds are released from the sun. And what that can do is the solar winds are released into interplanetary space, accelerating the already space weather environment, solar winds. So we always have solar winds out there. The average is, let's say, anywhere from 250 to 350, 400 kilometers per second. Once it reaches approximately 500 kilometers per second, then it can have an effect on our protective magnetosphere. Now, it's also important that when we have a solar flare and it releases a CME, coronal mass ejection, And if there's a coronal hole right behind it that all of a sudden opens up, that's going to accelerate the solar winds and give that CME an additional push to move it faster. And I believe that's what's happened with the last one a few days ago, whether that was from a flare or a filament eruption, followed by a coronal hole opening, and came right up behind the CME and kicked it in the butt, said, get going faster. Hence, the solar wind speeds at that time were at least 850 kilometers per second. So yet again, with today's M8.6 flare, another coronal hole opening was also approaching. So we don't have all the data yet. Now, it's very important. Two things happen when we have a solar flare. Remember my analogy of the gun being discharged. So we have the flare itself, the bright muzzle flash, and that can last anywhere from minutes to hours, long duration flare. That radio wave emission takes only 8 minutes to reach Earth traveling at the speed of light. If it's strong enough, then we could feel it. Sudden sharp stabbing pain in the head, sudden feeling of dizziness, vertigo. That's the radio wave that hits the Earth. If there's an associated coronal mass ejection, it takes anywhere from 15 to 72 hours to reach our planet. Therefore, you have time to prepare. And this is why I do an initial reporting. As soon as I get that information, I bring it to you. The data is not updated yet, but if you're predisposed and if you're already beginning to have these experiences, or any of your loved ones, you have that time period to prepare yourselves and them to better take care of them. So once again, let's go through the what happens to the human brain and the human body. So our brain and our heart operate off of electrical impulses as well as chemical responses, but essentially electrical. So when it comes to our brain, two things can happen. One, neurological, which means those things which can be felt. Headaches, migraines, including now people who have never had migraines or migraine type intensity headaches, dizziness, vertigo, tinnitus, ringing in the ear, people who have existing brain tumors, vestibular schwannoma, which is common, and depending on which nerve is being pinched off, quite often the auditory ear, ringing, tinnitus can be intense, painful. Next, we have the neuropsychological, what makes us go cuckoo, effects. And they can be anything from mild mood swings to being irritable, emotional, loss of cognitive functions, being unreasonable, loss of self-control of your emotions, including those who are very knowledgeable of the effects of space weather. Even we can snap. Loss of control of one's emotions, rage, violence, murder, suicide. Other physiological effects, remember the heart operates off of electrical impulses. You introduce highly charged particles. Those who already have heart conditions, you need to watch them carefully. As well as those with multiple sclerosis, MS, arthritis flare-ups. So again, when I give an initial report, just as I did this morning, you now have time to prepare yourself and your loved ones, especially, and I keep on repeating this because I see it happen so many times, those who already have mental health issues, autistic spectrum disorder, autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression. It can amplify. It's been a long day. And so as the data is being updated, if and when there's going to be a coronal mass ejection, of course, I bring that information to you. Now, aside from us, our planet has already been responding from the last one. I'll probably do an update tonight. As expected and so predictable. First, deep earthquakes. Bonin Sea, south of Japan. Tyrrhenian Sea off the coast of Italy. Therefore, we can expect an uptick in responses from Stromboli volcano and maybe even Etna. I received a report from somebody, thank you, north of Sulawesi. Within the last 24 hours, there was a 750-kilometer deep earthquake. I believe the magnitude was 4 point something. They are not always reporting these earthquakes. So he brought that information to me. That's a region I focus on very closely because my wife's family's down there, Mama. And the location where he told me the 750-kilometer deep earthquake, and I have that confirmed, was the location of a deep earthquake and a shallow earthquake event. About 2 months ago, also preceding the 7.2 earthquake between Sulawesi and the Philippines. Therefore, we can expect possibly, probably, a shallower response. Apparently, there was also a 750-kilometer deep earthquake somewhere in Colombia. So again, deep earthquakes in locations where we normally don't have them, as well as heat signatures throughout the globe. And I'll try and get to those later. But I just want to give you, to answer your questions, what can we expect? And this, well, I've told you lots of times what we can expect here, okay? Our hearts, our mood swings, etc. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, of course. And again, yeah, that's about it. I'm going to try and be back later this evening. At this time, the information has not been updated if we're going to get a hit or not on our planet. And if we are, I'll be back and I'll give you the day and the approximate time of the day. That's it for now, folks. See you later.